Coming up this week on the Digital Lifestyle Show, Rob Quickenden, Surface MVP, Microsoft Surface MVP, is going to be joining us, and he's going to be talking about the latest Surface devices. We'll be talking about the new devices, the form factors, the size, Snapdragon processor versus the Intel processors, what you can do with them, talking about how I use it for music production. We'll be talking about all that, so we've got a lot to talk about, so let's get straight to Rob. Rob, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Ian. It's really good to second time. I think November last time. I think looking back at my notes that we last did one of these.
And you're like me, a Microsoft Surface MVP, a big part of the Surface community. And I thought what we'd do is get you back on the show to talk about what's new in the world of Surface. There's been some new devices out, and I thought it'd be good to find out what they are. Last time we had a good discussion about what the difference between a Copilot PC and
we did.
And I'm still not that clear on them.
I think we're still trying to work that one out, aren't we?
Yeah.
Although I must say, I joined the call just now, and Windows popped up and said, "Did I want to enable super resolution mode?" Which sounds a bit like, to me, that I just think super pursuit mode from Knight Rider, but that jumped up. So I've clicked yes. So I've got no idea whether it's made any difference, but I clicked yes. So there we go. AI features at the best.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I can never quite get my head which AI features are coming to which versions. Although having used the ARM Surface Pro, which has got recall and everything on it. You start to see that. I think they seem to be first on there, don't?
It's funny as well, isn't it? And I'm sure we'll get into your discussion points, but I think it's almost now. I think being Surface MVPs in a way, we've had quite early access to some of the technology. I was out. I think it was just after the show. Yeah, I think it was just when I came back from Ignite last November when we last spoke on the show, and I had exposure to actual working versions of just about working versions of some of the AI features then, but it's hard to now imagine not having them. So I think when you've been using the features and you just take them for granted, it's a bit like Copilot. I can't imagine not having Copilot, on my device, on my phone, on my device for everything I do. But I just get used to those things now. Like it's just having them there. Things like even some of the Windows Studio effects that have been around for a while, it's just kind of there. So I think it's I think this is the moment, isn't it, where it's starting to become a bit of a special extra that no one really cares about, to being something that this is just the future of computing.
Yeah, I think so. There was never a big single thing, was it? There's just lots of little things that are sort of seeping into the OS. That's something we could probably talk later, like future OSs. But there is. Microsoft are just dropping these features in, and if you follow the insider builds like I do, every build there's something. There's something. They're always very small features, but there is something AI related, and you can see they're just bringing these out all the time. I was quite surprised, and we discussed this on the show, myself and Gary a few times. There wasn't ever like a big marketing release of an update to Windows 11 to say, okay, here's the new Windows 11 with all these features. Instead, they're just slowly releasing them through. And I can't, when you've got business head on, that's fine, because that's what you want, isn't it? You don't want a big build bang change. Yeah. You want those little drip feeds. But from a marketing point of view, you sometimes you think maybe they want a big push to say this is the new version of Windows 11, but that's not the route they're doing.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I think, like you say, we see a lot of these. If you're in the Insider program, which of course anyone can join the Windows Insider program, right? It's not just an MVP thing. There's millions of them out there. But I think it's really important. I think actually to if you are an enthusiast, if you do like to follow the latest trends, I think even if it's in work, we've got people at work enrolled in the Insider program for testing features and testing things and thinking about our change management process and things. But you do get a little bit, I guess, not complacent, but there is just these new little things that drip feed, and get better every week or every month, when these updates get released. And I think, we have to think about the masses, right? And particularly people that are, and there's a lot of people, as we're seeing a lot in the press at the moment, that are on Windows 10 that are going to be in for a real change, not just from an OS perspective, but actually from just the amount of AI that is now in everything.
Yeah, definitely. Even things, image editing or every,
Mm,
audio editing. Yeah, it's everywhere, isn't it? It's in every tool has got that in now, and I think you can't release a piece of software without AI being in it now, or an app.
yeah.
Otherwise, you can't get it past the marketing guys. Now, what I want to find out about is where we are with Surface devices, because
Yeah.
since we last talked, there's been some new devices, and if you're not following along carefully, it actually seems quite confusing. You've got quite a range of devices now. So we had a couple of devices launched. I think when was it? Last month, July, wasn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah, last
Yeah,
month.
July.
Yeah. So what were the new devices that were announced then?
Yeah, so I guess if we go back a little bit further, when we were speaking in November, we had, I think we just had Recall go into private preview on the newer devices, right?
Mm.
On the Surface Copilot Plus, and as you say, we talked about Copilot Plus last time. So we of course had the Pro 11 and Laptop 7, which were the AI devices at the time, and then we had I need to check my dates. Earlier on this year, much earlier on this year, we had the Intel variants of those, right?
Yeah.
The business class those, which were built on the Intel
Mm.
chipsets, of course. And I remember at the time everyone saying, "That's great. What about the Go range?" And I know there was lots of rumors floating around about what would happen with Go, and we were chatting about Go, weren't we, just
Oh,
before we joined?
I love my
Um,
love my
Today,
Surface Go.
yeah, so well, same. I think we were, and I'll give you some analogies in a minute, but yeah, absolutely. I think we've,
Yeah.
absolutely love this versatile little bit of kit. But yeah, so what did we have? We had another Surface laptop and another Surface Pro, but slightly smaller. So we've kind of got the Pro 7 range and the Pro 11, the Pro 11 and the Laptop 7, in multiple different chipset variants. And we've now had the two smaller devices, which are kind of in between the Pro, the proper Pro of the proper laptop and the Go range, and they kind of sit in the middle from a size perspective, but from a performance perspective, they're almost up there with their big brother. Are they brothers? Are they sisters? Are they cousins? I'm not quite sure. So yeah, we've got a 12-inch. So we have a 12-inch Copilot Plus. They're all Copilot Plus, of course, now.
Yeah.
Snapdragon powered Pro 12-inch, which is not just an inner change either. So there's actually quite a big redesign. So and hopefully you can kind of see. So it looks very similar to a Pro. It is a Pro, so it's got the same kickstand as before. But first thing that actually in this generation of devices as well, is we no longer have the Surface Connect port charger.
Oh,
So
right.
that's
Yeah.
gone. Which I must admit looks a bit odd not having it, right?
Mm.
It's been there. It's been a token point of Surface since day dot, but really,
Mm.
this generation since what, Pro 4. So all we've got really is two. So just if you can see that, just two
Right.
USB ports sitting on the side. The keyboard's changed as well, so it's still a Surface keyboard. It still opens up in the same way, but it's really rigid now. It's it doesn't bend at all. I think some of the feedback Microsoft had on Pro was that the keyboard could feel a little bit flexy at times.
Yeah, especially if it's on
Uh,
your knee.
yeah, when it
Can
was on your
happen.
lap and stuff. And I must
Yeah.
admit, I didn't really. I think they improved that through the years. But when you pick up one of these, it is. I mean, it's hard to do it justice on here, but it's really rigid. It really does feel like a laptop keyboard, and it sits completely flat now. So whereas the Pro previously the Pro used to kind of slide at an angle, which I think is what gave it some of that travel because it didn't sit flush on the surface. This now does, which is nice, but it's still the same. You still detach it, it still works in the same way. And they've also moved the pen. So if you remember, anyone listening, if you remember originally, and we talked about, gosh, it's like a show, isn't it? If you think about the
Mm.
original Surface devices, which the Go was kind of built on,
Mm.
then the only place for the pen was on a magnet, which kind of stuck to the side of the device. Magnet was kind of okay.
It's
In the
okay
newer,
until I lost my pen at Manchester Airport once.
well, they do, yeah, they
because it
do,
fell
and
off.
I mean it's all right. I mean, I didn't really used to struggle with it, to be honest. I think a lot of people said they did, but it was all right. This is the original pen. It was kind of okay. What they did on the Pro, around the time the Pro X came out, which was what, 2019, I think, was they included a pen tray in the new keyboard. So the new Surface keyboards actually had, yeah, that's the one. Yeah, I haven't got one in the hand. Yeah, it's got the pen storage tray, which I actually really liked. But because they've made this keyboard completely flush and closed flushly, what they've done on the new Pro, which I do like, is the pen now sticks on the back, and it's a really strong.
Yeah.
I mean, to the point where you need a little bit of force. Your kids aren't going to steal it. You do need quite a bit of force actually to pull it off. So and I took this out today for the first time on a test drive, and it was good to just put it in the bag. I mean, obviously I don't chuck it in a bag as such, but just to put it in a bag, put it in a case, and when you pull it out, you haven't got to find the pen. It does stick really well. So it's quite a nice design. I mean, the screen's super clear. So yeah,
it looks like it's a bit more curved around the back.
Yeah, do you know what it is? And it's not, when you kind of compare it, it doesn't. Yeah, when you sort of look at it, you think, oh, it's not massively more curved, but it does. There's something about it that when you look at it side by side to another device, it doesn't look that curved. But when you pick it up, you think, yeah, that does feel a lot plusher. It's also more curved around the edge. So I think they've done some really good work on the aesthetics. It feels, even though it's actually slightly less premium, if I dare say that, to the full blown Pro, so the Pro 11 range, because of the way they've built it, it feels really, I don't think I'm allowed to say iPad-y, but it feels really high end iPad. Right, it really does feel premium, and I think it's been great to see. Each iteration of the devices just feels even more premium. They've done a great job, and it's quick. I mean, I've only had it a day, but it's really nice. I mean, I had the usual niggles of just the sheer number of updates when I got it out of the box and and everything else. But yeah, so I went for it. But you've actually got the laptop 13.
Yeah, I've not got unboxed it yet, so yeah.
No, you haven't unboxed it yet.
I was literally arrived today.
I can't really say too much about that one, but I did nearly opt in for that one because of the battery life, and I was quite intrigued to see how, was it 23 hours, I think it says, of battery life would do. But I've used this. I used my Pro today on a full charge. I haven't got battery capacity enabled yet because it doesn't come on straight away. It takes, I think, 8 charges or something before it enables that. But yeah, I've used it all day today. I used it this morning. I travelled into London. I used it in meetings this morning. Last afternoon in London, and came home, and I'm still on like 64%. I think when I looked earlier on, 64% battery. So it's it's pretty good seeing it's now half-8.
Yeah, that's really good. And that's one of the things with the ARM Snapdragon processor ones, isn't it? Is the battery life.
Yeah, I think everyone. Yeah, it was a logical thing to do. I mean, I think we'll probably get shot for saying this, but I think it was. We had so in my job we sell Surface devices to clients and things, and the Go range was really popular, and the logical thing to me was, why aren't we putting ARM chipsets into the Go range? And I think obviously they've discontinued the Go line, which I think is officially addition to the Go line. But obviously these devices are built on that kind of thing. So what I say to customers is, that this is kind of the Go, but it's slightly more premium, and it deals with a lot of the issues I think that people talked about with the Go. I mean, the Go's like you were saying earlier on, it's a really good versatile device, but because it's small and therefore got a small battery, the battery life wasn't what it could have been. And I think there's obviously a lot of research been done onto what size factor matters, and I think it does really make a difference. Like, it's not, if I look at the two side by side, so that's the Go, and that's the Pro 12. And if I put them together, I haven't done yet. It's not, it is a little bit bigger, but it's almost just like a border. But because the screen border ratio is a lot smaller, it actually feels like a full size.
And then when you compare it with the full service Pro, that is quite a big.
That's quite a different. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I think it's actually quite a nice size factor. I mean, I know some people like the much bigger devices, but it's I'm really pleased with it. Really pleased with it so far.
Yeah, I always wanted to go with the ARM processor. That would have been sort of my ideal device, really. Which comes from a day. I mean, I had the original Surface RT, and
yes,
which is probably
I'm sure we showed them off last time. Yeah,
which is probably the size of the new one, more or less, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah. I think it's all. Yeah, I mean, they changed the form factor, the screen ratio size, but I think I think the other really key thing to note about them is that when we think about the power performance of the devices as well. So battery life, amazing. I mean, I look forward to hearing your actual feedback on this 23 hours of usage when you're holding it, so you'll be able to put it to the test. But I think even on the, even to get, beyond the day, right? And I think we're talking about, I expect now to be able to take a device in and just use it. And I think, the fact that we've got USB charging on all these things anyway does make it a lot easier. Like I've normally got, if I go traveling anywhere, I've always got a battery pack for my phone. And last year when I bought a new battery pack, I just bought one that was, I think my battery pack's like 65 watts. So it will charge a Pro quite easily. But I think it's now great that, we almost now don't have a new device anyway, that is not a Copilot Plus PC. So when we think about where we probably were when we were talking last time on your show, then this stuff was a bit new, bit shiny, some of it wasn't around yet. Whereas now we've kind of got this platform that has been, all the devices have now stepped up. So every device that Microsoft now sells that's new is a Copilot Plus PC. And I do think if we move forward, 12, 18 months, then unless you're purposely buying old stock or old devices or second-hand devices, then actually every new device you buy will be a Copilot Plus PC, because that is the future.
And then the laptop 13 then, so that's just essentially the laptop form factor of this device. Are they the same sort of internals? Yeah,
same internals. I mean, the only difference really, and it's probably an important point if you're following speeds and feeds, is that and I do wish they'd give them a name, because you've got the laptop 30. I mean, is it going to be laptop 13-inch V1, laptop 13-inch V2? Yeah. I do wish the marketing team had got more involved, because the naming convention is just going to be confusing. But the difference between them, so they are currently only in Snapdragon, so the ARM chipsets currently. Don't know if that's going to be the default forever. Not sure. We can hypothesize that maybe it won't be. But they also have the Snapdragon X Plus chipsets, not the X Elite. So they are slightly lower spec device, but they still, obviously, to be Copilot Plus, they're still delivering 45 tops of MPU and all those things. There's still a minimum requirement of 16 gig. So every device has a minimum of 16 gig, which really should be, what you're putting in a device these days, really. But, most devices that were probably bought 3 years ago were probably on 8. So I think actually just by buying newer devices now, you're typically not going to buy a device with less than 16 gig of RAM in them. And I think the ones that we've got, well, certainly the one I've got, has got 24.
Yeah. Which is, so it's going to. It looks like they've slightly rejigged the form factor. I have got my old one that I bought myself a few years ago. So this is I think it's a second gen laptop, but so I think they've redesigned the form factor so it's a bit smaller and a bit sleeker than.
Yeah, they did. You're right. Yeah, because I've got a laptop 7 which I got last year. Also Snapdragon. I think that's a important point to think about. In that, I still get. I mean, you touched on earlier about it can be a little bit confusing with the variants and stuff. And I think actually what Microsoft have done over the last few years, and I we'll debate if this is good or bad, is they have massively diluted the lineup, haven't they? I mean, you were talking earlier about your laptop, your Surface Laptop Studio, but they do now really just have Pro and laptop, right? Really, that's the lineup. I think the confusion, if there is one, probably comes more around the chipset variants that you can have, because we've got, my son's got a Surface laptop which is AMD, right? So you've kind of got, you've got AMD, you've got Intel, you've got Snapdragon. And I think for the average, particularly the average consumer that is not into technology, that's just buying a laptop, that can be, I don't know whether you see this, but that can be a little bit, that's probably the most confusing factor, I think, for people, as to kind of what's in it. And I had a friend of mine who's an Apple person. I don't know if that's the right term, Apple person. That sounds terrible, doesn't it? Yeah, an Apple that was like, oh, it's so confusing. Like, why do I have to choose? Like, why are there different things? Like, Apple does it so easily with just the kind of processor names and things. And I was trying to argue the case, and I was like, yeah, kind of, you're right. It is a little bit, it's a little bit confusing between why would you want to switch between the two.
Yeah, and I suppose it's still the ARM and the AMD and the Intel is, it's not. Yeah. It's just about budgets, I think, really, isn't it? Price points.
Yeah.
But the Snapdragon and the Intel ones is a massive difference. So when you're sort of talking to consumers or potential buyers, is there a confusion between what you get with the Snapdragon ones as opposed to the Intel ones?
Yeah, I think there is, and I've got customers that, I mean, from a customer perspective, so these are corporate organisations that of course buy Surface. Then I tend to see people dabbling with the Snapdragon range, because they hear all the and there's a lot of negative press out there about, well, you read most of the reviews on Copilot PCs, and it will say, if you're worried about compatibility of applications, don't buy one. But people don't really know what that means. For the again, I hate using the term average person, but for most people that are doing web browsing, using Office apps, Spotify, all the kind of, just the stuff that most of us kind of use. If that app will run on Windows, it will run on ARM, and they've probably got native apps for it. A friend of mine's a graphic designer. I convinced her last year to buy a Snapdragon. They were doing some really good deals over Christmas, and she bought one. And all her friends have said, look, none of the Adobe apps will work on it, and they do. They've got native applications now for this stuff. And I think it's got, I think Microsoft got a little bit burnt a couple of times. Obviously, firstly with the first generation of, I mean, we're going back to the RT days, right? We're going back, 13 years, nearly 14 years. But, again, with Pro 9, Pro X, they kind of got burnt a little bit with it. But it's moved on a long way. And I think Apple uses ARM for everything. And Apple have a slightly different client base, so they can be a little bit more aggressive with the developers. But I think we're getting there. I think with corporate organizations, there's quite often some real legacy, old, these are organizations out there that never really properly migrated from XP. They've still got these really old apps, 16-bit apps, those kind of things. And of course, they have to run under emulation mode on a Snapdragon chipset. But again, it does it pretty well. And I think, I've only ever come across a couple of applications that have, and it's not even really been performance, it's more just been stability, where they might crash a little bit more than other applications. So I think there is a little bit of be careful. But I think if I was a consumer, I'd buy a unless you're doing some really crazy graphic or music stuff at really, really far out there things with odd and old hardware, or any MIDI cables or any of those kind of things, or serial connectors, then there's a problem.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that, because that's one thing I do. I've got the studio here, and so I thought it'd be an interesting exercise to see how much stuff I could get working.
Yeah.
And actually, surprisingly, quite a lot of stuff worked. What didn't work was some of the newer Korg synths. They use the NDS for networking, and
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
the driver, the installation of the driver, blocks you, the USB driver, so you just can't install it. Whereas some of the other software, there's plugins, especially even the older ones, they work fine because they weren't checking to see what OS you've got, so they just installed and they work. But of course, Microsoft have made a big push with Cubase. That's the one that I use. So I've got the native version, ARM version of Cubase installed on here, and it works absolutely perfectly. It works really well. It's efficient. I didn't get any audio glitching. It was working with my USB audio interfaces without drivers. It was just the built-in inbox driver worked with it as well. So it's only when you install, and they were librarian softwares that I was trying to use. So some stuff just worked and some stuff didn't. So I actually did sort of email. I've got a good contact with Korg and said, are you going to do any native versions? And they just said no, there's no plans at the moment. But I think now we're getting Cubases out there. M Audio have got native drivers. All these manufacturers, OEMs, are bringing out native stuff for it now.
And of course, Microsoft are changing the whole way drivers work across Windows anyway. So I think that will help because I think some of it's laziness. If I'm honest, some of it is demand. So if you were going to build something that had a limited budget, then what would you build for? You'd probably build for Intel or x86 because that's almost the default, isn't it? And I think it's just going to take a little bit of time because Microsoft aren't in that position. They've got such a legacy of users out there and legacy of application vendors out there. They don't have quite the same control, really, I guess, and influence to tell people that you've got to rewrite that application or it won't work, because they'd get absolutely, if they stop making, if they do things that prevent businesses from working, they're going to come under a lot of scrutiny. So I think actually the dual, and I think again, you summarised that quite well earlier. Of you've kind of really got the more modern AI powered chipsets that give you that really superb battery life. And it's not just about battery life, but battery life is phenomenal. I think the others are going to catch up. I think I think we're due. I read a lot about some of the battery technology that's coming, and I think it's incredible what has been done by lowering the power of. And that's really how we're getting battery life, right? We're lowering the power consumption of every component in the device. So there's, therefore we're consuming less power. Therefore we're, the batteries last longer. But I think we've not really seen the innovation in battery technology that we probably all expected. My kids, the AA batteries my kids put in their Xbox controllers don't last any longer than they ever did. And I think actually, at some point we will get that innovation. I mean, you keep reading about stuff, but I think we'll get there. I mean, actually, it then won't be about battery life anymore. It will then be about the performance and the NPUs and those things. But I think what it's done is just kick-started, everybody else. And I think a lot of it is going to be, is going to be trust and choice. I mean, I think again, actually, I need to check this one, but I'm pretty certain. Well, they certainly were initially, but the Snapdragon devices are thinner than the Intel VMs. They certainly were. I'm not sure whether that's the case now, but I remember when the Pro X came out, that was like super thin, and that was a good battery on that. It was
it was, and I think the battery life is great on this Pro that I've got with the Snapdragon, and if I hook it up to this Korg USB controller, which has got a built-in audio interface as well, and I've got a really nice portable rig that runs off battery, off the USB, so nice. I can just take these two things out of it, and I've got a little studio, wherever I go. So I think that's really good, and that's more as more of the software manufacturers bring out more. I said there's more demand and everything else, and perhaps it becomes it more of a thing. Then we'll get more of the drivers and everything else. But certainly the OEMs are on board, which is good to see. I think Ableton
Yeah,
has got a version.
it's good to see that, and I guess we then go back to the question, don't we, about why Surface, right? I think
Yeah.
that's then the question that probably comes up because, as you say, right, it's not, Microsoft announced, so the category of device that they announced was obviously Microsoft, right? That was a Microsoft device, but of course now we've got Copilot Plus PCs from pretty much every manufacturer out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And there's another one as well. Another device that we should mention as well is the 5G laptop.
Yes. Yeah,
So,
that was a good one. We did talk about that earlier, and you're absolutely right. We do. So yeah, that's been quite a revolution actually, because I was saying before we went live on the show, prior to getting this Surface device, my daily Surface is a Pro 9 5G, and that was game changing for me. Having access to one of those. I did actually have a Go 4G for a while as well, which was nice. So yeah, but it was massively asked for. It was like, why haven't you done 5G in a laptop? And I remember being at MVP Summit earlier this year and Microsoft talking about it. Obviously we were under NDA then, so we couldn't share it. And I actually hadn't really fathomed how difficult it was getting the antennas into these devices without increasing battery usage, without the way in which you work muffling the signals. And it was quite interesting because they've done it in a really smart way on laptops. So if you've used any device like a phone, your phone's normally got cases on them, right? But your iPhone or your iPads or any of those things that have got cellular, you can kind of see the bands around the edge, and they put them around the chassis typically of the bit that the screen. And what they've done in a laptop is positioned them really carefully inside, so you don't know you've got antennas, which is phenomenal to see how they've done that. I think there's 6 antennas inside the laptop. So if I got my facts right, it was 6 laptop. Six 5G antennas inside the device, which is amazing. So yeah, massively asked for, I think, for business. Right, and it's only come to business, right? So that's probably worth stating. So there's not a consumer version of that yet, and it's only an Intel variant.
Right. Yeah. I suppose that. So are there any 5G? Is it just the laptop that's 5G, or are there other models with 5G?
So it's on the newer devices. It's only the laptop. So laptop. Yeah, it's the only one. There's not 5G currently in the new device we talked about today, so the Pro 12 and the laptop 13. If you want a Pro currently, then you need to go. There is the Pro 11, so there is a Pro 11 with 5G for business, but not the Pro 10, for business, and then Pro 9.
Right. Yeah. So there are still those are.
There are still variants, but the big thing was laptop. Like, this is the first Surface laptop to have cellular.
Yeah. And then, does that mean we're not likely to see a laptop Go in the future?
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? And to me, the Go range was. I thought the Go range was great. I mean, I know we both love our Goes. For we sort of joked earlier about they're cheap enough to kind of like not quite treat as a disposable, right? But I let the kids use it and they draw on it, and they're quite arty, my kids, and they use it for all sorts of stuff. We take it away with us. We use Netflix on it and Prime and those kind of things. But battery life obviously isn't awesome because it's a small device, and it was obvious that putting Snapdragon chips into those was a good idea. But they haven't. They've kind of, that range has stopped, and it's now the Pro. They need a name. They need a name. Like Go Plus or something. I don't know. I don't work in marketing, but So they have. So currently there's no. I think the official line is there's no official word on whether there'll be a replacement for those devices, and of course the new smaller Pro and smaller laptops, so Pro 12, laptop 13, are are bigger than the Go, smaller than the full size versions, but the price tag is higher. So they're not the same price point. They are more expensive than the Go range. So I think it will be, I think with everything Microsoft, I think it will be a case of, looking at the feedback. I see, I've got some public sector customers that went full in on Laptop Go because it was a really great device for people that were frontline, that were traveling. Different colors were great. They're easy to put in the bag and carry around. It was a really good device, but again, they were a little bit underpowered for some users. So yeah, I think it's a shame. But I think at the same point, Microsoft do far more research than I do certainly on that opinion, and I think we've got to wait and see. I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I bought my wife a laptop Go. I think it's a second generation one, and she just uses it for, she does her Excel on it and browsing and that kind of stuff, and she absolutely loves it because before that she had one of my old Surface laptops which she felt was too big. She sat on the sofa. It always seemed too big for her. So that laptop Go is just a really nice form factor for her. So yeah, I think if that was to need replacing, I think she'd be disappointed if she wouldn't really want the bigger one. But yeah, she'll get one of my. If that breaks, she'll have to have one of my bigger ones. But, yeah, it was. So really nice.
You won't be letting her use your new one then.
Yeah, I think I'll be keeping hold of that one. Well, yeah, it's a shame. I like the Go one, both of them, especially like as we said. I love this one. I had the first Go, which lasted me a long while until I replaced it. This is a Go 4, and it, that original Go kind of replaced was that use case for the RT almost. I think we talked about that on the show last time. But when the RT came out, the battery life was such a breath of fresh air. I remember being at CES, and the first thing you do at CES in the press room is try and find a plug socket. And I had the RT, and I got into the habit of just leaving the charger in the hotel because I just didn't need it. I was out all day with it, and that's kind of where it's not quite the same thing, but it kind of where these go. I guess that's now passed on to these new devices. So I can see where Microsoft perhaps coming to have converged on these premium, slightly larger than the Go and the RT and whatever, but they must be maybe the sweet spot.
Yeah, I mean, I do think they're missing a trick on that small size, but I guess you've also got to be, Microsoft have got to be sensitive as well to, to the rest of the market as well and kind of what's out there. And I think, I would use the Go when I was traveling, but it was very much my companion device.
Yeah.
So it wasn't my daily. Whereas I think because the Pro was kind of too big. And obviously I'm a big Pro fan, so the Pro was slightly too big to use in those kind of smaller companion type mode things. So I would take two devices. I would take my Pro, and I'm fortunate enough that I could do that. I would take my Pro and I'll take my Go. And so when I was in a conference or dipping in between things or meetings or even one-to-ones with my team or whatever, I would use the Go for that that ease and lightweightness and things. Whereas, and obviously I've only had it a day, but I think the Pro 12 will replace that need because it is, it's ever so slightly bigger. It won't quite fit in the case that I've got. Won't quite fit in the case that I've got. That I need to buy a new case, but it's small enough, but also big enough.
Yeah.
So I think it's quite an interesting size actually.
I mean, I always was a fan of the sort of the 7-inch tablets, which has gone away pretty much completely now. I mean, I had the Windows Lynx tablet, and I've got the Toshiba. It was an 8-inch Toshiba Windows tablet that came out with. Can I say XP? No, it wasn't. Wasn't even Vista. It might be Windows 7. Or maybe Windows 10 actually when it first came out. No, it was Windows 8. It was Windows 8, yeah.
Windows 8, of course. Yes, it was. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it was an 8-inch Toshiba one. I've still got that down there somewhere, and that was a nice format. But they've seemed to have gone away. We don't see, if you go on Amazon or if you go into Currys or whatever, you're not seeing Windows tablets, are you?
No,
They're
you're
all,
not. No.
that's kind of gone, hasn't it? And that's used to be my thing, and I think this is the closest to get to that. But yeah,
It's funny, isn't it? You know, they've never quite. I think it's hard, like to get that blend of. I mean, it was funny. Like I wrote a book the other day about it was, you know, the birthday of Windows 95, right? You know, and that's just mad when you think back, Windows 95, right? And actually how much of that OS is still influenced by Windows 11 today, right? I mean, massive change. And I think that's the thing again, isn't it? It's that kind of evolution. And I think if you only ever built a tablet, you wouldn't. If you built a tablet, so if Apple decided to build, I mean, I know they've got Mac OS, right? But I think for Microsoft, they've tried a couple of times to kind of have like tablet mode, and I mean, Windows 8 went full the other way, didn't they? And it was, you know, probably ahead of their time in a way. But yeah, I am surprised there's not been more work, but I guess the term when she says there's no need for it in, you know, maybe for that client base, that we've not got more of a tablet mode for particularly for things like Surface and, you know, Surface Pros and things like that. You know, I think the applications now do a good job of adapting. You know, if you've got a device that's got touchscreen, the interface changes. If you've got a device that supports pen, the interface changes. They're standardizing a lot more of that kind of pen and ink input into things if you use it. But I guess there's also a lot of people that don't use pen. I mean, one of the things that they did last year was drop pen support on laptop, which I remember thinking like, oh, like, why would you do that? Like, you know, and I think again, Microsoft telemetry was just if you have a laptop, you don't use a pen.
No,
like, maybe that odd time you might DocuSign something.
Yeah.
But it's not the kind of environment that you do it. And I guess from a cost, repairability, you know, manufacturing costs, everything else, I guess it made sense to remove that. But
yeah,
that was it was an interesting one. And I think actually going back to it. No, I mean no. I mean I've like I say, I've been a pro fan for since year dot. So to me, I find it hard to use a device that's not got pen support.
Yeah.
But that's just me. So yeah, so actually, you know, I guess you're you know, going back to your question at the beginning, I think, you know, we are really left with two form factor of devices now. So, you know, we don't have the laptop studio, which I think was one of your favorites. Was an incredible piece of kit. I mean, the engineering behind that was just phenomenal. And I think we have lost some of that innovation flair. But I think if I go back to kind of, to me, what Surface has always been about, Surface has been about creating the very best experience of of software and hardware. You know, it's as close to Apple you're ever going to get in the Windows ecosystem. But of course, Microsoft have got a whole OEM, you know, HP, Dell, Lenovo, etc., that create devices as well, and therefore, you know, the operating system has to serve those. But then Microsoft need to drive innovation, and I think, you know, and I'm probably going to upset all the other OEMs out there, but it's, you know, we don't really see that innovation coming from anybody else. You know, if we think about, you know, Surface, right? So it was Surface that had the Windows Hello camera very first. You know, it was Surface Pro 4 that introduced that, and then of course it became the security standard for Windows, and of course other OEMs had to follow. You know, the 2-in-1 factor that came from Surface, that was the first, you know, Microsoft device to be a 2-in-1 form factor. And of course you need the OS to work with the hardware in order to adapt. And, you know, arguably they went a little bit too far, if you remember the old tablet mode in Windows 10. But, you know, that's what Microsoft do. You know, they innovate the market to demonstrate this is what great looks like. I mean, it's down to the OEMs to create their own flavor, and sometimes they enhance those things, and they, you know, arguably improve some of the things that Microsoft have built on, and sometimes they adapt, and sometimes they just follow. So I think actually when I think about Surface, and of course within the Microsoft world, so Microsoft in Redmond, the Windows team, the Surface team, now the cloud PC world, and maybe that's a podcast for another day, talk about Windows 365. But when we think about how these things all kind of come together, you do now have the Surface team and the Windows team, and it has been like this for a few years, sitting working together. So we should have a much better experience when new hardware comes out.
Yeah.
With the operating system fully supporting it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And then, so what do you think we're likely to see next from Surface? Or I suppose, what would you like to see next from Surface?
Yeah, I mean, some of the things I think I'd like to see we probably won't get, but I'll tell you anyway. So, I think it's a real shame we don't have a Surface Studio. So not the laptop studio, but Surface Studio. They were phenomenal bits of kit. I mean, just again, engineering beauty. I kind of hope they'd create a screen, their own branded screen, and I do think we might see the return of Surface peripherals. Now I know Microsoft moved the manufacturing of those away into more of a OEM type approach, but I think with things like Windows 365, which we're going to hear a lot about this year, I think it's time for more Surface accessories, because if you're going to have a cloud PC in the future, then you need to have something branded right, to kind of run it on. I think that would be nice, but I would love to see the rebirth of Surface Studio, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think we'll see. I'd imagine we would see 5G, coming into the next iteration of Surface Pro. I think that'd be logical, because it's, why would you not carry on that trend, and put that in? And what else do I think we're going to see? Yeah, I actually kind of hope we might get a slight naming change for the not quite a Surface Go bigger version, but smaller than the Pro. Because I think that's a little bit confusing. Like, Apple have got iPads and iPad minis. I don't like the word mini. I actually quite like the word Go. I think people would accept, personally, sorry, Microsoft marketing team, I think people would accept Go as being the current smaller Pros. But,
so maybe,
I think they need to make it. They need to make it simpler for people to understand. From that side. I don't think we're going to see loads. I think they've spent quite a bit of time standardizing on the range that I think is most popular, and really perfecting those models, I think, is what they've done, and they've done a good job of that, I think. Then the first Goes that they produced were massively underpowered. I mean, the form factor was great. It was a great concept, but they were so underpowered. So underpowered. And I know they got better because the chipsets got better, but I think it's I think what Microsoft have learned is now when they create anything, it is good on day one, and I think that's a massive improvement. Actually, if you followed Surface for a long time, there's no, everything they now build is significantly better than the previous version. When you think of some of the specifications of the devices, and I think my probably shout out to anybody, consumer and, but more importantly, business, is don't underestimate the differences between the version numbers, right? So if you think about laptop 5, which is relatively, I still have customers buying laptop 5s because there's still stock of them, and they're at a really good price. But the newer Surface devices are 90% far. I mean, almost twice the performance, and in some cases 3 times the battery of these devices. And it's quite a significant difference between a 5 and a 7, which is kind of where we are really if you think about old term stuff. And again, the memory, you think about the memory that's in these devices by default now as well. I think that's the big shift. I think I'd like to see more advanced GPU options, so slightly higher spec. I know that's more of a niche market, but we of course had Book, which was kind of where the real grunt work came into those devices at the time. They were extremely configurable, and again, Studio, right? I mean, I forget what the RAM was that you could go up to on that, but it was obscene amount of memory you could put in those things. Terabyte hard drives and those kind of things. So I do think they need something that's a bit more powerful, but that will fit in the same chassis.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I don't suppose we're going to see any of the real quirky edge things like Neo or anything like that. Those days have gone now, haven't they, I think?
Yeah, I think they've gone, and I think Panos was very into this kind of like new, and I think COVID's changed a lot of things. I think AI has changed a lot of things, and I do think Microsoft need to and have, I think, just ensure that what they produce is of the highest quality, has got longevity, and they are very good at supporting devices, from a software perspective, far better than some other OEMs that we could mention but won't. And they need to grow market share, and I think you need to do that. You've got to make your lineup simple, which I think they've done. I think there's just a little bit of work to do, maybe on some of the, as we said, some of the naming convention, but don't shoot me for that.
No. It's great to see new devices, and I'm really looking forward to. I'm away tomorrow, so I can't even get to unbox it till Thursday. So, but I'll have.
Oh, I don't know how you wait. So I was lucky. Mine was due to arrive today, and I got a notification from UPS saying it was coming yesterday. So we were about to go out. We delayed our dog walk to wait for it to arrive, and I kind of let it run through a setup and various Windows updates, and obviously had to put it in the Insider program, and then it finished the updates on those things. So it was quite nice to come back to that kind of being ready to play with, which meant I could use it today. I would have struggled to have waited. I would have either been up all night last night getting it ready. Or I would have had the day off.
I'm saving myself with that. I'm looking forward to giving it a try, and I'm going to get it connected up with his again with all the different music gear as well, and see if I can make music with it as well, which I'm pretty sure I can
I've been
do.
really intrigued actually as how you get on with that. I mean, one of the things I was actually going to try on mine again was do you use Camtasia? Do you use the Camtasia suite?
Yeah.
So I always used to use that, and I must admit, because my son does a bit of video editing now, because he does, like, he's only 10. He's got he's got his YouTube channel on trains that he does, but he does all the editing himself, and Camtasia was quite hard to get your head around. So he uses Clipchamp, right, which obviously is not quite the same class, but pretty feature rich and good enough for most things. So he does all his editing on that. But I remember when I got my Pro 9, that really struggled with Camtasia, because that wasn't ARM support. So I don't know whether they do now, but I keep seeing adverts for it, and some of the new AI features in it look really cool. So I keep thinking to myself, I might reinvest in that, because obviously we used to get it free, didn't we? As an MVP, we used to get Camtasia.
Yeah, I pay for that because I use that for all my videos.
And does that work okay on your ARM?
Yeah, because I filmed the
Okay.
music one on there, so I didn't have any issues with it. I may have edited it on the desktop though. I can't remember. Sometimes I edit on the big desktop. It's easier. So, but yeah, I definitely filmed it because I did the video capture with it. So yeah.
Okay. Well, I might have to retry that then, because I was holding off, but pretty much all my devices I use are ARM. So if they've got an ARM version, I think I'll take it.
Yeah, I don't know this specific version, but I definitely recorded because I did all the Cubase stuff. I definitely captured that using with Camtasia. So I may have even edited it, but I definitely recorded it. So,
I noticed you got out of your own question though. So what's your what do you think we might see or won't see?
I don't think we'll see anything futuristic or anything that's going to real curveball. I think we're just going to see this focus on the productivity devices as Microsoft's way now is. We're not going to see 20-inch foldable, or we're not going to see anything like that. We're just going to see 12, 13, 15-inch laptops and tablets, the pro range. And I think that's where they'll focus for now. And like you said, where the innovation will be around chipsets and battery lives and 5G, and that's where we're going to see all the features. I'd really love them to surprise us though and bring out here's a new foldable Surface Pro, something. But I just think those days have gone now.
Yeah, I think that market is still, I go back to the innovation, right? And I think of like Duo. I mean, there was 2 iterations of if you ever have
which
one.
I loved.
I loved it. And I think, Duo 2 really kind of affected it. And I read lots of articles at the moment that are talking about, a lot of the big mobile bloggers and stuff cover it, but they're actually like Microsoft was on to something with the with the dual screen rather than foldable. But it's a shame. But again, I think it was at the time those devices came out, it was really only that or the first generation of the Samsung Fold, which was awful. The first one was terrible, absolutely terrible, as you'd expect a first version of anything to be. So again, it was quite impressive what they did. I mean, it's a shame that it didn't go, but I think a lot of that is the market. I think like Microsoft don't have a name in mobile. I think naming it Surface was a smart thing to do, but again, I don't think as a consumer the brand is out there. It's not. And I think without this being an anti-Microsoft show, which of course it's not, I think they struggle the same with Copilot to an extent. I think Copilot is really well known in enterprise and commercial relations, public sector, anywhere like that. But I think consumer, it's still, everyone knows what, it's like the Google Bing thing, isn't it? Everyone knows what ChatGPT is. And it's only when you actually show someone Copilot and by the way, you get GPT-5, you get all the kind of stuff that you actually get that you're already paying for with something else, that you do actually get it, that people go, oh wow, okay. So I think there's definitely a bit of an identity crisis that Microsoft need to deal with in consumer before they can kind of create stuff that everyone wants to go and get.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's probably why they've gone, look, what, our focus is on business. That's where that's where we play. I think the alignment and stability between the Windows team and the hardware team is phenomenal. It's really great to see those things come together. And I think we've got a really interesting future if you look at where a lot of the focus is on now around Windows as a service, and the Link device is built by the Surface team. It's not called a Surface. Again, that's probably been done for reasons beyond my awareness, but it's built by the same team, which is really interesting. It's got the same security modules, the Pluton processors in it and things, which are, a huge step above just kind of TPM, which now, of course, is going to be much more mainstream in the Windows architecture. And I think Cloud PC is going to take off. I think it's 3 years old, I think. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. You look at the integration between the Windows OS and cloud. I think that's going to be quite interesting to see how that evolves as well. So I think that's where we'll see a lot of it. I think there'll be more innovation coming into Windows than we'll probably see in, as you say, in new shiny things in the Surface world.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been absolutely brilliant catching up with you, Rob. Really appreciate you joining us. Where can anybody go to get in touch with you? Where's the best social to get in touch with you?
So best social. So I'm quite easy to find. My surname's quite rare. So Quickenden, you'll find me. I'm not the American guitar player. I'm the other one.
Okay.
So yeah, I blog at robquickenden.blog. I've got a podcast which I must get you on actually next time around, called Under the Surface, which is relatively new. And yeah, LinkedIn, X, formerly Twitter, and all those kind of things. But yeah.
Excellent. Well, it was really great catching up, and we'll get you back on, and perhaps we'll talk cloud PC and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's quite exciting stuff. And look, I look forward to your unboxing and your experience, and perhaps next time we can talk a bit more about compatibility and ARM versus Intel. That'd be quite an interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Interesting chat.
It would be great to do that again. Right, it was brilliant to talk to you. Thanks
Likewise. Again. No, cheers, mate. It's been brilliant. Enjoyed it.